that this last caliph, when he comes, he will be the Mahdi. This is the very character that Ahmadinejad is talking about. And by the way, the coming of the Mahdi is not simply a Shiite sect demand. It is also understood by the Sunnis as well. All Sunnis and all Shiites, all Muslims believe in the coming of the Mahdi just as much as Christians believe in the coming of Christ. So the picture is much bigger than the ancient Crusader issue. It is the issue of dismantlement of the Islamic Caliphate in Turkey.
Well, do you believe that Russia is mentioned in Ezekiel 38?
That's a loaded question, because you have to look at every single map that we have by historical scholars. If you look at the Macmillan Bible Atlas, the Bible Atlas of Bible Lands, the Bible Encyclopedias, every single map you look that tries to pinpoint Magog, they will pinpoint it as far as southern Russia and the entire region of Turkey. Now, southern Russia split from Russia proper. We have the CIS nations, the Commonwealth of Independent States, and that is Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, those nations, Chechnya. And then you have also Turkey and Turkmenistan. They all have one religion, and that is Islam. In fact, I present a challenge to anybody who wants to challenge this issue, that they want to insist on Russia proper, is to look at every single quote that is given by a Western analyst of Bible prophecy. When they give the quotes for evidence, you will see the quotes that will say that this region is in southern Russia. This is an assumption that southern Russia extends all the way to Russia proper, although now we have a split between southern Russia and the prior communist country of Russia itself, Russia proper. So it could be very likely that the Bible is speaking about the Islamic regions of this Russian regions. Mm-hmm. And this issue in itself really takes several hours of debating and analyzing all the different historic references. But in the book, I present a very detailed argument for a southern Russia with Turkey as what the Bible is trying to say. In other words, I try to be very conservative in my analysis of the Bible and attempt to be as hermeneutically possible when I interpret these references. I can show also several references, and when it talks about that in Ezekiel 28 through 31, 32, it's really pinpointing to Turkey and the southern parts of Russia.
Well, going back to this idea of the U.S. or Israel launching a preemptive attack on Iran, aren't we taking a very, very serious risk that Russia will become involved in such a war?
Well, we think that Russia is a risk because Russia aids and abets the Islamists in giving them weapons. However, one could argue and say, well, we're giving Saudi Arabia weapons as well, very sophisticated weaponry from the United States of America. One could argue it was the United States of America that aided the Mujahideen in Afghanistan that basically crushed the Russian Empire in the end, and we had victory against the Russians. However, we did not look at the consequences of aiding the Afghan Mujahideen, in which gave birth to the Taliban. So in the West, especially in the United States government, the way they think and the way they proceed with such problems is they always look at the least worst possible scenario. Let's hold hands with the jihadists because, again, the jihadists do believe in God. Again, the jihadists could help us rid the world from communism. But ridding the world from communism gave birth to Islamic fundamentalism, which was much worse. So what we need to do is we need to rethink our policies in the Middle East. We need, and the way to go around it is really to divert the usage of oil of Saudi Arabia, because if you look at Saudi Arabia, this is the entity really that we are helping. We consider Saudi Arabia our ally, when Saudi Arabia itself, it's the one that funds all the madrasas and all the jihadist ideology that is going all around the world. In other words, the United States of America is inadvertently helping and aiding the jihad movement. So this is another aspect of the whole issue that we need to restudy and rethink.
But the question of whether Russia will become involved, that is something that we have to take into consideration. Just this week, Russia made the statement concerning the installation of the U.S. missile interceptors in the Czech Republic and Poland. They said that they will respond in a military way. Clearly, Russia is becoming irritated with the United States, and you have to consider the possibility that if the U.S. and Israel launches an attack on Iran, and if we use tactical nuclear weapons, and the entire Middle East is thrown into chaos, and the Strait of Hormuz is shut down, and oil goes to $200 a barrel or higher. I mean, Walid, we are facing World War III.
That's right. Now, I hope you don't misunderstand me. That I'm not.
I mean, you're calling for World War III, Walid. I mean, you really are. You and John Hagee are calling for World War III.
Well, we are not calling to initiate World War III.
But it's going to start. It's going to start when you start bombing Iran.
Well, then look, there is a choice. Either there'll be a loss of lives.
It could be my life. This is what I'm saying. We're going into World War III. I don't think we can just throw these threats out here and just say we've got to attack Iran without stopping and thinking, Walid, that possibly tens of millions of people may die.
Well, there could have been hundreds of millions of people. One dies once Iran reaches its nuclear capabilities and tips those Shahab 3s with nuclear weapons, and then begins to strike all over the regions in the Middle East. We will have hundreds of millions of casualties. We need not to blame ourselves for the battle.
But I mean, right now, Walid, China has nuclear weapons that could take out hundreds of millions of people, and we're not launching a war against China.
That is right. This is why I argued in the beginning that is not the issue of holding nuclear weapons that's the problem. The problem is the trigger happiness of who holds those nuclear weapons. No one can argue that Ahmadinejad threatened to wipe off Israel off the map. So, with that kind of threat, do you suppose that the United States and the Western powers lay dormant as Ahmadinejad builds these, and we trust Ahmadinejad in controlling? But
let me ask you, Walid, let me be very blunt with you. Why should my son die in a war that is Israel's fight with the Arabs?
Well, it is not only Israel's fight with the Arabs. The Islamist ideology and the Islamic Revolution made it very clear. They've declared war on the West as well. This is a war that was declared on us on 9/11. Had your son been on the building on that day, your son would have been killed already. Why should the children, or the fathers of children who died in 9/11 should pay the price of our silence when it comes to radical Islam? So 3,000 Americans died. Are their lives unworthy to us?
But Walid, in April of 2001, the Bush administration gave $142 million of tax money to the Taliban.
Yes, and this is why I condemned this, and I think I mentioned that to you, that it's bigger than this even, giving tax money and aid and military know-how.
Well, isn't the problem that we've got this Council on Foreign Relations, Bilderberger, Trilateral Commission, globalist elite that is running U.S. foreign policy, and they have made enemies all over the world for the United States of America. I mean, if we just kept our nose out of everybody's business, I don't think so many people would be hating us.
Well, I would agree with you if we diverted our oil policy. The problem is the oil policy. We need the Middle East for oil.
So it's really oil?
Absolutely. And President Bush said it himself. America is what? Addicted to oil.
So is this war about oil? Are we attacking Iran about oil?
Well, that's not why we're attacking Iran, and this is not why we had the war in Iraq, basically, because we have lost more money than the oil is worth. So it is all the above that is true. We can't take one element of the truth and say that's the whole truth. Our hunger for oil made us and forced us to be involved in the Middle East. However, you have an America that does not want to dig its own oil wells, does not want to dig Alaska. So
we just bomb other countries because we don't want to dig for oil, drill for oil off the coast of California. So we start wars in other countries?
No, that's not why we're starting the war in other countries, basically to steal the oil and rob the oil of the Middle East. That's the Islamist argument. This is not why we are at war with the Middle East. The Middle East declared war on us. However, because the Middle East is a major oil provider for the West, that's why we are concerned However, had we not